Values. We see it every day. Artists use it every time. It can be used to tell a story, or used to describe the form of an object, and many more. But what is value really? Well, value is just a term used to describe how bright or how dark a particular color is. But to explain it better, we would be starting with a non-saturated color, which are white and black. But what are the uses of value? Like I said before, one of the most important roles value play is that they help us recognize the three-dimensional form of an object. It's also one of the many ways we artists use to set our viewer in a particular feel or mood, or to convey the story we are trying to pass through our art better. It can be used to show depths and many more. I'm sure by the time we are done with the first part of this lesson, we will have a better understanding of value, and we will make the best use of value in our art, which in return will make our art a whole lot better. Here is my art before, and here is it after understanding how values work. So I believe you can get it too. Enough of that, let's get right into it. Today's example would be a spur, a cylinder, a cube, and a cone. Why, you may ask? Because we break other complex forms into these four simple shapes. Before we proceed, I'd like us to take a look at this image. This illustration gives an illusion that the center shape pushes in, while the surrounding shapes pushes out. But what happens when we flip the image? Now the center shape pushes out, and the surroundings in. This little illustration helps us to know that light and shadow show depth. We break down the form of an object into 5 simple values, which can be used to create the illusion of volume. But please note that there are more to value than this, and we will get to that later. An highlight is a direct reflection from the light source on the object with the eyes, and the position of the highlight vary depending on the angle of the light in relation to the eye. Side notes: highlights are more vivid on shiny surfaces. This is the starting point of any render, the color in which others are built on, or the major color on an art. How bright the base color is depends on the 3 things. Firstly, how bright the light source is. Second, the angle of the object in relation to light, and the color of the object. Now moving back to how bright the light source is. For example, objects under a sunny day will significantly be brighter than objects under a cloudy day. Now angles. Planes on a more inclined angle will be lighter than planes on a less inclined angle. And lastly, the value of the color of the object plays an important role in creating the overall brightness of the object. This is when the main light bounces off a surface and reflects a weaker version of the light onto the object or environment. A quick tip though, the more light bounces, the weaker it gets, and the bounced light takes on the color of the surface in which it was bounced. Bounced light can be tricky though, but it's easy once understood. Let's say for example, the surface color is red and the object is yellow. From what we discussed the last time, what color do you think the reflected light will be? That's right, it will be orange. A key to getting better bounce light is not making the bounce light too light that it starts to look like a light value itself. The key to remember is that the lightest shadow is darker than the darkest light. Keep in mind that the darker the color of the surface, the lower the strength or intensity of the bounce light. And here is a fun fact: black reflects no light whatsoever. So if the surface is black, then there won't be bounced light. But here's the interesting part: what if the surface color is a light color, but the object is black or a dark color? Do you think the bounce light would show on the object? Yes, it would. Why? Because black attracts and absorbs color, and white expels color. So colors closer to black will absorb color better than colors closer to white. Let's take for example black skin. We can see the sky color or the sky reflection on the skin is more vivid and saturated on a black skin, and light on it overall just pops more. Or if you look on a white skin, in a white person's skin or a lighter color skin, you will notice that colors don't show as much as they do on a black skin. So just to prove further on the theory of darker colors attracts and lighter colors repel. This is the point where light cannot reach. Now, this is very easy. Just stick with me. What a cast shadow is a cast shadow is caused by the object blocking the surface from the light or the light source. But here's an advice I heard a while back. The person said, to draw better cast shadow, we should imagine ourselves as the light, and from our point of view, or any part of the object from an angle that we cannot see, we'll definitely have a cast shadow. And how sharp a cast shadow is depends on the intensity of the light and how close light is to the object. For example, cast shadow on sunny days are more vivid and sharp than shadows on a cloudy day. Now, since we understand the basic 5-value system that gives the illusion of volumes, let's move on to something a little bit more challenging, which are other shapes. So moving on will be cylinder. Now let's see those 5 values we talked about I talked about on the cylinder. Again, we have a highlight, but do you notice that this time it isn't a dot? Why? Because we break down values into planes, because planes are easier to understand. Planes closest to the light source are brightest, and planes darken as it turns away from the light source. And this time the light is pointing directly towards this plane. Then we have the base color, rich shadow, reflected light, and the cast shadow. Here is the core, but this time light and shadow compress at one point because they still follow the same principles of highlights, local color, core shadow, reflected light, and cast shadow. And for me, the cubes are one of the easiest and straightforward ones. Well, the planes closest to the light source is usually the highlights, and the planes that aren't in shadow but aren't directly facing the light are base color. Angle lights cannot reach are core shadows, and the planes that are in shadow but face a surface reflecting light are called balanced lights. The shadow of the object caused by the object blocking the light is called cast shadow. We understand the 5 basic values. Let's talk about the 3 more which I promised you earlier, which can take our rendering to a whole new level. Let's take a wonderful look at the work of Narabata Gambold. Sorry, I don't really know how to pronounce the name, but these are also areas that aren't in shadows, but also aren't fully in light. We have light and dark halftones. The closer the color is to the lighter the halftone, and the closer the color is to shadow, or the more turned away the plane is from the light, the darker the halftone. But let's just keep in mind that you can make your dark tones as dark as you want, but don't make it too dark that it starts to look like shadow value, just like the way I said with the light. Well, a terminator is just a dividing line between light and shadow. It's used to show the point where light turns to shadow, and vice versa. This is the shadow that is made when 2 surfaces are in contact. It's the point where light can hardly reach. The intensity of shadow occlusion depends on how close the 2 surfaces are. If they are farther apart, it creates more room for light to enter, and if they are closer, it creates less room for light to enter. And to put all what we have learned into a practice, Let's paint on a sphere, a cylinder, and a cone, and you do the cube. Okay, let's start with the base column. Then let's separate light from shadow and create a cast shadow. Let's not forget to paint in our balanced light, and to top it all up, let's add a highlight. Now this is enough to show form and depth, but something is still missing. That's when the other values come in. Let's slap in some dark halftones to it, and also let's not forget to shade in the light halftones too. Blending the dark halftones further closest to the shadow to create a terminator, and add occlusion shadow to further distinguish the sphere from the table surface, and you're done. Compose the smoothness by blending in more lighter halftones and more darker halftones to achieve a more realistic look, or you can just go with a more defined value to create a more interesting look. Either way is fine. Now that we're done with the sphere, let's go with the cylinder. We have the base color, core shadow, cast shadow, bounced light, highlight, dark halftones, light halftones, terminator, and shadow occlusion. And there you have it. You have learned from today's video how to divide complex forms of an object into 9 simple values. And with the right practice, you will get better using it in your work. Speaking of practicing, you can find hundreds of interesting and challenging references to help you better at understanding values on Pinterest. When you find a reference you like, try to divide them into their respective values. Don't forget to follow the easy steps I showed you. With all of that said, my name is Travy. Hope you learned something new today. Stay creative and have a good day.